Maybe you're tired of watching TV and Netflix or maybe Amazon Prime or Hulu, whatever it is that you've been watching since you've been there at home. But if you're anything like me, I love the idea of a detective show. And for me, I love British detective shows. Yes, I'm one of those hoity-toity type folks that only love now British TV. And I love watching these. And I especially love the idea of a detective who is always in pursuit of someone who's committed a crime. Inevitably, there are things in their life that will kind of sidetrack them for a little bit, but they will always come back and be in this never-ending pursuit until they catch the person that they're looking for. Others of you, when we think about this idea of pursuit, you think about hunting. I would guess that the exhilaration that comes from the process of hunting is sometimes much more desired than actually taking the animal itself, because there's just this excitement that comes from the pursuit. Others of you, when you think about a pursuit, you think fondly back to your dating days, how you were in the pursuit of the heart of your spouse, and the feelings of butterflies that would come around, and that you would simply maybe not be able to eat in their presence because you were so enthralled with this idea of pursuing their heart. Well, all of these are at the forefront of the passage that we're going to look at, and that we're going to conclude our series of Comforting Chaos today. We've discussed the many characteristics of our shepherd, how he protects and guides, how he comforts, and yes, today, how he pursues us. This word in the Hebrew language is a beautiful, beautiful word. It's called Hesed. It's God's Hesed love. And it describes how our shepherd pursues our heart in order to bring it home. Psalm 23 verse 6 says, "Surely your goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever." As I think of this kind of love, my best description of it is how God holds so tightly to me that he never lets me go. Even to the point where I'm holding on to him at different points in time in my life. But even when I'm faithless and let go, God's Hesed love is always gripping tightly to me. Well, this is the way that God's love is. It pursues us. I hope that you have been experiencing that kind of love during this coronavirus time. I think that we're all becoming very weary of the process, whether it's the social distancing or the mask and gloves or just being separated from friends, whatever it is, we're all becoming weary and tired of the waiting. Then our hope for you today is this, that you would experience this Hesed form of God's pursuit of your heart. Every time I think about this type of love, as it's used throughout the Old Testament, I think of the New Testament stories that we find in Luke chapter 15. And we see how God is viewed as a shepherd, but he's also viewed as a father in these metaphors that we find in Luke 15. In verse 4 and 5, he says, "If a man has 100 sheep and one of them gets lost, what will he do? Won't he leave the 99 others in the wilderness and go to search for the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he's found it, he will joyfully carry it home on his shoulders." Do you see the pursuing heart of God in this verse? He cares so much for you as an individual that he would leave the safety of the flock. You see, there's safety in that flock, not only for the sheep, but also for the shepherd. A wolf that's out looking and lurking is not going to attack the whole flock while the shepherd is there. You see, there's safety there, and the shepherd leaves the safety of the flock to go and find the one who's lost. And that may be you. Jesus Christ left the comfort of the presence of the Father, and he came in to search and to be in pursuit of us. And what's the goal? To bring us back home to the place of safety and fellowship with the Father. We see later in verse 20 of chapter 15, the self-destructive son. We often call him the prodigal son, but he's made his way home. But in his despair, I want you to think about it. he stops short of the final destination. Maybe he catches a glimpse in the distance, and he's determined that he just can't go on the rest of the way. Maybe it was because of his own shame, perhaps the fear of whether his brother would accept him again, or even worse, the fear that the heart of his father would lean towards rejection rather than pity. But what was the result in that story? Verse 20 says, "So he returned home to his father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. And filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him." You see, the father didn't wait for his son to grovel all the way home. He instead left the safety of his own home and ran, full of love and compassion, and expressed that hesed kind of love with an embrace and a kiss. That is the heart of our shepherd. I'm sure that you can identify with the son. I certainly can. I've gone my own way so many times. I've taken advantage of the provision and the comfort that my shepherd has provided to me, deciding instead to do my own thing. But even though I am at times faithless, our shepherd stays true to his own character, and he pursues us, and he holds on to us with his goodness and mercy. So often I think we feel like it's whether we are good and have mercy, whether God's going to love us. No, it's based on his love and his characteristics that he continually shows us goodness and mercy. This whole principle has another connotation. The ESV puts it this way: "Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life." I want you to think about that and look at it this way. What is the legacy of how I have followed my shepherd? What is traveling along behind me in my wake? Is it goodness and is it mercy? Do those follow after me because I'm so pursuing the heart of God that's pursuing me that in my wake others find goodness and mercy? As I reflect back towards last month, it's always a very, very memorable month for me, the month of April, because I lost both my parents to death in the month of April. My mother in 2009 and my dad in 2012. But it's memorable not because of the sadness of their loss, but rather for the remembrance of their investment in me, that I am to legacy that out. Now, I'm not sure that legacy is a verb, but it should be. How do I take all that's been painstakingly invested in me, and how do I pass it on to others? How do I legacy it out to others? It certainly goes to my family, to Jennifer, to Kara, to Allison, to Morgan, and to many others whom I come in contact with. But it also comes out for me in the heart as a pastor, as a friend, as a brother. Because these are the things that have been invested in me, and I should be leaving them in the wake after me, just like my parents invested it in me. The goal of leaving goodness and mercy in our wake is to guide others home to the fullness of a relationship with God. It is the true nature of what the Bible calls abiding. When we abide in our relationship with Christ, it leaves this legacy for others to follow that, where they can soon abide in a relationship with God themselves. Now, I'm fascinated by airplanes, and especially aircraft carrier landings. Maybe it's the fact that Top Gun came out when it was a very impressionable time in my life, when I was a junior or senior in high school. But I remember those carrier landings and how cool they really were. And I remember a story relayed by Jim Lovell, who was on Apollo 13, that one night he was making a carrier landing and all of his instruments went out as he was approaching the ship. He had no idea where it was, and there he was, lost over an endless black expanse of ocean, looking for the needle in the haystack of his carrier to make a safe landing. And because it was pitch dark and all of the lights in his cockpit were out as well, he looked down into the water. And what he saw was the microscopic phosphorescent algae that was being churned up by the wake of his carrier. And he followed that trail, that phosphorescent trail, right to his carrier and landed safely at his home base. I want to ask you today, what are you leaving in your wake? Is it a bright pathway to a home of abiding in your shepherd? You know, lights become brightest in the midst of darkness. And this may be one of the more darkened times of our history that any of us will experience. But it is a time where we need to shine the brightest to help others find their way home. Surely your goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever.
Guys, if you've been enjoying these videos, I want to ask that you like this video, maybe leave a comment and subscribe. But most importantly, hit that bell for notifications for a new refuel.